Welcome in everyone. Today I've got 10 tips for you as you start to play City Skylines 2. These tips are going to be helpful for both beginners and folks just transitioning from Cities 1 to City Skylines 2. There's plenty here, so be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with any questions and I'll try to answer them, and let's get started. So one thing you should be aware of early on before you start your city build and before you even pick your map is that you need to select the theme you really want to use. This is not something you can change after you've started your city. There are two themes at the launch of Cities 2, which are European and North American. Selecting a theme can affect things like your service vehicles in the city being European styled or North American styled. While you can't go back and change your map theme, you can go to load game and then click map options to change other settings like natural disasters, unlock all, unlimited money, or you can restart the tutorials. Also, don't forget that when you pick a map, you're also picking a hemisphere, which may affect when your seasons occur. And this isn't affected by the theme that you choose. So now let's talk about placing roads with fill beneath them. First, you're going to need to adjust the elevation step and lower it. If you go below the elevation of 5, you'll most likely have roads that still conform with the ground. At about 5 meters, you'll start to see roads that have fill beneath them. Much above 5 meters or 7 meters, you'll start to see roads that are open beneath with pillars. Because at launch, Cities 2 doesn't have keys, you can also use these roads to make your own keys. So if you have 2 elevations, you can put the road over that elevation change. You want to match the upper height as much as you can with the road, that way it remains zonable instead of creating some form of bridge or elevated road. Now you can do this with pretty much any road in Cities 2, creating basically terraces in your city, while still maintaining the ability to zone at least on one side of that road. You can also use this method to make a key at a coastline. I typically divide my coastline into 2 parts, the upper portion and the lower portion, blocking out as much water as I can because the road doesn't want to overlap water, especially at this height. So after you've placed the road over that terrain change, you can then re-terraform the water side of the road to have the water back against the wall. You're just going to need to keep an eye on the incline of your road because sometimes they may come out a little bit uneven depending on your terrain. Roads are pretty intuitive in City Skylines 2. So much so that depending on where your mouse is placed may actually change how the road is constructed. So in connecting this highway, you can see that the road is altering based on where I'm clicking. It's shifting where cars are going to merge to either side of the road based on the proximity of the cursor to one side or the other. So keep this in mind when connecting roads that you may want to have the merger lane in a specific spot, so it may depend on where your cursor lands and how it connects to that node in order to get that result. Now to change the direction of a road, you're going to go to the road replace tool, then you're going to left click, hold, and drag the mouse in the direction that you want the road to go in while hovering over it. With the replacement tool and hovering over, you can also make adjustments to how the roads connect and where that merger lane is that you saw just a moment ago. This next tip is something that I learned the hard way. Now you may have heard from some of the dev diaries and early access content that wind and air pollution is a factor in Cities 2. So you'll want to make sure that you check the wind direction before building your industrial area or your city for that matter. By hitting the info views button in the top left, you can access air pollution, which then can give you an indication of which way the wind is blowing. That direction is static on your map and it's not something that is going to change as you progress through your city build. And of course, you can click the water pollution tab and you can get an idea of which way water is flowing so that you can plan for sewage and water intake. And you can find areas with groundwater if you choose to pull water from those sources. In Cities 2, you're able to build cities apart from one another because you're able to purchase tiles that are separated. And in Cities 2, your roads will carry electricity, water, and sewage. However, highways and bridges don't actually support this. Additionally, you can't build or alter anything on the tiles you don't already own. However, with highways, there's a small workaround at least to transport electricity. Once you unlock advanced road services, you get a new tab under the road menu. And one of the upgrades that you can then do is add lights to your roads. But doing this to a highway not only gives you lights, but it also gives you the ability to transport electricity. You can do this by using the high voltage lines to connect to your main power source and then attaching them to a transformer, and then using low voltage lines to actually provide electricity to the highway, which will then transport electricity to wherever you need it. Or you could even attach something like a wind turbine to help provide small amounts of power, or if you just want to place these away from your city and connect them using the low voltage lines. This may help you save a little bit of money. Otherwise, you'd either need to double up on your power plants or power sources, or connect your cities using the expansion points you collect. Cities 2 also supports imports and exports, and that's not just limited to goods. In fact, you can actually export or import electricity and water. To export electricity, you can connect a power plant to the grid that's pre-existing on the map that has outside connections. This can help your city generate a small amount of income, which you can then check on your economy tab as you progress through milestones. You can do basically the same thing with water. You just need to make sure you have a surplus of both of these things in order to sell them. Unlike Cities 1, Cities 2 does not have a zone selection tool. That was something added late in Cities 1 that was super helpful when building cities. So if you follow the snapping options very closely, you can get pretty even zoning. But without being able to turn off zoning functionality on a road and having an uneven road, you might get something that looks more like this. It's as if both roads are fighting over the zones between them. But there is a way to get Cities 2 to give priority to a certain road. All we're going to do is actually zone the bottom road, and what you'll see is that when I apply the second road still uneven to the first one, it's going to prioritize the zoning on the road we actually zoned on. This can be helpful when trying to refine certain areas and cleaning up how zones operate in Cities 2. Cities 2 also has a tree brush feature, but there's a snapping option you should be aware of. So obviously when you go to tree brush, you're going to select the tree you want to add and brush it onto your map. However, if you're trying to remove trees, it will only remove the tree you have selected in your inventory. While in tree brush and holding left click, I can add a bunch of bushes. And if I hold right click, I can actually remove specifically those bushes. If you want to remove everything, you need to uncheck the remove only matching type snapping option so that you can remove all trees that may be in that area. Now, you may have heard that contour lines were added to Cities 2. I'm not sure why they weren't there in the first place, but you have the option of turning them on with different features in the game. While showing up by default when you go to Terraform, they're not going to show up by default when you open up the roads panel. Now at the end of the snapping options, you have the show contour lines option, which you can check on. You'll have to check this on whenever you switch between different types of roads. You also have the ability to turn on contour lines when placing buildings. We talked a lot about modular buildings in my early access videos, but there's something you should remember when you are expanding your services. There are multiple types of modular buildings. Some go directly on property, which you can only typically do one time per building, but there's some that need to be adjacent to the property. And with these, you can typically place them more than once, expanding the capability of that specific service. This is really helpful and it applies to multiple different services because then you're able to pinch a little bit more out of what that building can offer while you save up money to increase your capacity at a larger rate. For example, with the health clinic, we're able to double the patient capacity with all these add-ons. You could add multiple different storage facilities to your landfill, or you could just add some more playgrounds to your elementary school. Regardless, I think you get the idea. I hope you found these helpful as you begin your journey in City Skylines 2, or if you're just trying to freshen up on some of the mechanics. A big shout out to Cuboid and Canadian Moose Plays, who's also here on YouTube, for their help with this list. So don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, drop a comment down below with any questions or suggestions for future videos, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys next time. Take care.